Killian Bryce wiped the grease from his hands with a shop rag. The familiar burn of metal shavings under his fingernails was a comfort after 12 hours at the machining plant. The night shift paid better, and Reed needed every extra dollar for his medical bills. At 38, Killian's body felt older, but he pushed through. His son came first. The hospital parking lot buzzed with late evening activity. Killian's boots crunched against the asphalt as he made his way to the pediatric wing. Room 314 had become his second home over the past year. Reed's mysterious illness kept bringing them back here, test after test showing nothing concrete. Through the window, Killian saw his son propped up in a hospital bed, his small frame lost among the white sheets. 8 years old and fighting something the doctors couldn't name. Reed's sketch pad rested on his lap, colored pencils scattered across the blanket. Even sick, the kid drew dinosaurs with the focus of a scientist. Reed's face lit up when Killian stepped inside. "Look, I drew a triceratops family." Killian examined the drawing, noting how Reed had drawn 3 dinosaurs together. A big one, a medium one, and a small one. "That's amazing, buddy. The details are perfect. The baby stays close to the parents for protection," Reed explained, his voice tired but eager. "Just like real families." Maisie sat in the chair beside the bed, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite spending the day at the hospital. She looked up from her phone with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Killian, you're early. Finished the Ellison job ahead of schedule." He kissed Reed's forehead, checking for fever. The skin felt normal. "How's he doing today?" "The same. Tired. Some nausea after lunch." Maisie's tone carried the practiced wariness of a concerned mother, but something felt off. She spoke about Reed's symptoms like items on a grocery list. Kendra entered the room, carrying 2 coffee cups, her designer heels clicking against the tile floor. Maisie's mother had the kind of presence that sucked the warmth from any room. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her cold eyes examined Killian like he was a bug she'd found in her kitchen. "Killian," she said, the name coming out as if she were spitting something distasteful. "I brought Maisie proper coffee. Hospital coffee is unfit for consumption." "Thanks for staying with them," Killian replied, though he meant nothing of the sort. Kendra's help always came with judgment attached. "Someone has to maintain standards." Kendra sniffed as she handed Maisie a cup and pointedly ignored Killian's presence. "Reed needs consistency in his care." The implied criticism hung in the air. Killian had heard variations of this theme for 8 years of marriage. His working-class job, his night shifts, his simple approach to life. None of it measured up to Kendra's expectations for her daughter's husband. "I brought you something, Reed." Killian pulled a small toy dinosaur from his jacket pocket. "Found this at the gas station. It's a stegosaurus." Reed's eyes widened. "It's perfect." "Thank you, Dad. The child has enough toys," Kendra remarked. "What he needs is proper medical attention, not gas station trinkets." Killian bit back his response. Arguments with Kendra accomplished nothing except upsetting Reed. "The doctors are doing everything they can." "Are they?" Kendra's tone suggested otherwise. "Perhaps if he had better insurance, private specialists." "Mom, please." Maisie's voice carried a warning, but she was looking at her phone again, fingers typing rapidly. "I'm just saying that sometimes a father's pride gets in the way of a child's welfare." The words hit their mark, as Kendra intended. Killian felt a familiar surge of anger, but he kept his face neutral. He'd learned long ago that showing emotion around Kendra only gave her ammunition. "I'm doing my best for my son," Killian said quietly. "Of course you are, dear." Kendra's smile was razor-thin. "I'm sure your best is quite sufficient." Reed looked between the adults, sensing the tension. Killian sat on the edge of the bed and opened the sketchpad. "Show me more drawings, buddy." For the next hour, Killian focused entirely on Reed, discussing dinosaur facts and admiring each sketch. Maisie and Kendra spoke in low voices near the window, their conversation punctuated by glances in his direction. When visiting hours ended, Killian kissed Reed goodnight. "Will you come back tomorrow, Dad?" "Every day until you come home," Killian promised. Walking to the parking lot, Killian noticed Maisie and Kendra remained in deep conversation beside Kendra's Mercedes. Their body language suggested conspiracy rather than concern. Kendra gestured emphatically while Maisie nodded. Neither woman noticed Killian watching from across the lot. Something cold settled in his stomach, but he pushed the feeling away. His family was under stress. Everyone dealt with worry differently. Saturday afternoon found Killian standing over Desmond Firth's grill, beer in hand, the scent of barbecuing meat filling the air. Desmond's backyard provided a welcome escape from hospital rooms and the constant undercurrent of tension at home. The bar owner had been Killian's friend since their Marine days, and his house remained one of the few places Killian could relax. "How's the boy doing?" Desmond flipped burgers with the precision of a man who'd fed hundreds of customers over the years. "Better some days, worse others. The doctors keep running tests." Killian took a long pull from his beer. "They can't find anything definitive. Kids are tough. He'll bounce back." Killian nodded, though doubt nagged at him. Reed's illness followed no clear pattern. Good days mixed with bad ones in ways that made no medical sense. The symptoms appeared and disappeared like someone was controlling them. "Dad, look." Reed ran across the yard, a foam airplane in his hand. Despite his recent hospital stay, he seemed energetic today. "Uncle Desmond showed me how to make it fly in loops." "That's great, buddy." Killian smiled, watching his son's enthusiasm. These moments of normalcy felt precious. Maisie sat at the patio table with two other wives, her laugh carrying across the yard. She wore a sundress that showed off her figure and makeup applied with care. Kendra occupied the chair beside her, wearing enough jewelry to fund a small car. The older woman's disapproving gaze swept the modest gathering. "I don't understand why Maisie insists on these gatherings," Kendra said, her voice pitched to Ingrid. "Surely there are more appropriate social circles." One of the other wives shifted uncomfortably. Everyone knew Kendra's opinion of Killian's friends and their working-class lifestyle. "These are good people, Mom," Maisie said, though her tone lacked conviction. "Good people, perhaps, but hardly ambitious. A woman should encourage her husband to reach higher, not settle for mediocrity." Killian pretended not to hear, but the words stung. 8 years of marriage, and Kendra still treated him like a mistake Maisie needed to correct. What bothered him more was how rarely Maisie defended him anymore. "Killian works hard," Desmond said loudly, his jaw set. "Honest work pays the bills." "Oh, I'm sure he does his best," Kendra replied with false sweetness. "Some people are simply content with less." The conversation died. Desmond's eyes found Killian's, a question in them. Killian shook his head slightly. Starting a fight would only make things worse for Maisie. "I need another beer," Killian said, heading inside. The kitchen provided temporary sanctuary. Through the window, he watched Reed chase butterflies, while the adults pretended the tension didn't exist. His phone buzzed with a text from work about Monday's schedule. Normal life continued, despite everything feeling fragmented. Maisie's voice drifted through the screen door. She stood near the far corner of the patio, phone pressed to her ear. Her body language suggested secrecy. Shoulders hunched, voice lowered. "No, not yet." She was saying the timing had to be perfect. Killian moved closer to the window, straining to hear. "I know you're tired of waiting," Maisie continued. "But we stick to the plan. Everything depends on the next steps." She paused, listening to whoever was on the other end. "Of course, I'm sure he doesn't suspect anything. He's too focused on Reed to notice what's really happening." The words hit Killian like a physical blow. He set his beer down with trembling hands, mind racing through possible explanations. Who was she talking to? What plan? What hadn't he noticed? "I have to go," Maisie said quickly. "We'll talk more tonight." Killian moved away from the window before she turned around. When Maisie returned to the group, her smile looked forced. She avoided his eyes and resumed her conversation with the other wives, as if nothing had happened. For the rest of the afternoon, Killian watched his wife more carefully. She checked her phone constantly, typed messages when she thought no one was looking, and seemed distracted even during conversations with friends. This wasn't the behavior of a worried mother. This was something else entirely. Driving home, Reed fell asleep in the back seat while Maisie stared out the passenger window. The silence felt heavy with unspoken questions. "Everything okay?" Killian asked. "Just tired. It's been a long week." "Who called earlier?" "At Desmond's." Killian pressed gently. Maisie's body tensed slightly. "A friend from yoga class. Nothing important." The lie came easily, which made it worse. How long had she been lying to him? What else had he missed while focusing on Reed's health? That night, after Maisie fell asleep, Killian sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and pen. He began writing down everything he could remember about Reed's illness: dates, symptoms, medications, hospital visits. Patterns might emerge if he studied the timeline carefully enough. The first entry read: Day 1, Reed complained of stomach pain after dinner. Maisie gave him children's medicine. Pain persisted. 3 pages later, Killian stared at his notes with growing unease. Reed's symptoms often appeared after meals Maisie prepared alone. They worsened on days when Kendra helped with childcare. They improved during Killian's days off when he supervised everything personally. Correlation didn't prove causation, but the pattern was undeniable. His son got sicker when certain people had access to his food and medicine. People who claimed to love him most. Killian closed the notebook and went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Tomorrow he would start paying closer attention to everything. If his suspicions were wrong, he'd feel foolish but relieved. If they were right, he couldn't finish that thought. Not yet. The hospital corridor was quieter at 10:30 p.m. Most visitors had long gone. Killian had stayed late at the plant, finishing a rush order. And guilt wasn't at him as he approached Reed's room. His son had been readmitted that morning after another episode of mysterious symptoms. Laughter echoed from inside the room, light and casual, which seemed out of place given the circumstances. Killian paused outside the partially open door, confused by the tone. When your child was sick enough for hospitalization, laughter felt wrong. "It'll be over soon," Kendra's voice carried clearly through the gap. Killian froze. Something in her tone made his blood run cold. Not the voice of a concerned grandmother, but something calculating and cold. "As long as no one finds out," Maisie replied, her voice equally casual. The words hit Killian like a sledgehammer. His knees nearly buckled as the full implication sank in. They were talking about Reed's illness like it was a project with an endpoint, something they were controlling. With trembling hands, Killian pulled out his phone and started recording. The device felt foreign in his shaking fingers, but he managed to activate the voice recorder just as Kendra spoke again. "The boy is tougher than expected, but children are resilient. A little more patience and shoe." Maisie's voice dropped to a whisper. "Someone might hear. Your husband is at work, and the nurses are busy. We have privacy. I still don't like talking about it here. You worry too much. He suspects nothing. Too busy playing the devoted father to see what's right in front of him." Killian's heart hammered against his ribs. The phone continued recording as his world collapsed around him. These women, his wife and mother-in-law, were discussing harming his son with the casual indifference of planning a dinner menu. "The timing needs to be perfect," Maisie said. "I know what I'm doing," Kendra interrupted. "I've been planning this since before you married him. The boy was never part of the equation. Mom, he's still my son. He's an obstacle. Nothing more." Killian bit down on his fist to keep from crying out. Every instinct screamed at him to burst through that door and tear them apart with his bare hands. But something deeper, colder, held him back. This conversation was evidence. These women had just confessed to poisoning his child. "How much longer?" Maisie asked. "A few more weeks, maybe a month. Depends on his resistance, and how well you follow instructions. And you're sure it can't be traced. Trust me, when this is over, you'll have everything you wanted. Freedom, money, and a fresh start. No more pretending to love that simple man and his unremarkable life. The words cut deeper than any physical wound. 8 years of marriage, 8 years of believing in their love, 8 years of working himself to exhaustion to provide for his family. All of it a lie. Maisie had been planning his destruction since the beginning. Sometimes I wonder if there was another way, Maisie said quietly. There wasn't. He would never have given you what you deserved. This way, you get the insurance money, the house, everything. Tucker will make sure the medical records show natural causes. Tucker, the name meant nothing to Killian, but he filed it away. Another conspirator in whatever nightmare they had created. I should check on him, Maisie said. Make sure he's sleeping. Killian heard movement inside the room. He quickly pocketed his phone and walked down the corridor, pretending to arrive fresh for an elevator. When he turned the corner, Maisie was stepping out of Reed's room. Killian, she said, and she seemed genuinely surprised. You're late tonight. Long day of the shop. He studied her face, searching for signs of the monster he'd just overheard. But Maisie looked like the same woman he'd married, beautiful, concerned, tired from caring for their sick child. How is he sleeping now? He had a rough afternoon, but the doctors adjusted his medication. Every word felt like poison. She spoke about Reed's suffering with such practiced concern, never revealing that she was the cause of it all. I'll just look in on him, Killian said. Of course. Kendra sat beside Reed's bed, reading a magazine. She looked up when Killian entered, her expression shifting to its usual disapproval. You're quite late, she said. The child asked for you several times. Work ran over. Killian approached the bed, his heart breaking at the sight of his son's pale face. Reed looked so small, so vulnerable. How long have you been here? All day. Someone needs to ensure proper care. The implied criticism was clear. He was failing as a father by working to pay for that very care. Killian sat in the chair across from Kendra, studying her face, looking for signs of the evil he'd heard in her voice minutes earlier. But she appeared to be exactly what she'd always seemed, a cold, judgmental woman who thought her daughter had married beneath her station. The doctors seem optimistic, Kendra continued. They believe they're close to a diagnosis. Lies. All lies. They knew exactly what was wrong with Reed, because they were causing it. That's good news, Killian managed. Yes, soon this nightmare will be over, and Reed can return to normal. Normal. The word carried terrible weight now. Killian understood that Kendra's version of normal didn't include Reed being alive. For an hour, he sat with his son while the two women maintained their performance. Maisie brought him coffee and asked about his day. Kendra made cutting remarks about hospital conditions and Killian's late arrival. They played their roles perfectly, never revealing the monsters lurking beneath. When visiting hours ended, Killian kissed Reed's forehead and whispered, "Daddy's going to take care of everything." The boy stirred slightly but didn't wake. Killian memorized his face, the gentle features, the long eyelashes, the small hands that drew dinosaurs with such care. Whatever it took, whatever he had to do, his son would survive this. Walking to the parking lot with Maisie, Killian fought to maintain his composure. His wife chatted about her day, her voice warm and loving. The same voice that had coldly discussed his son's murder 20 minutes earlier. "Are you okay?" Maisie asked as they reached their cars. "You seem quiet." "Just tired, worried about Reed." "I know, but the doctors are confident they'll figure this out soon." She kissed his cheek before getting in her car. The gesture felt like a snake's bite. Driving home alone, Killian replayed the recording on his phone. The voices were clear, the words unmistakable. His wife and mother-in-law were slowly killing his son, and they were getting away with it because no one suspected the women who loved him most. But now he knew, and now he would make them pay. Killian sat in his garage workshop at 3 a.m., the recording playing through earbuds for the dozenth time. Each word felt like a knife twisting in his chest, but he forced himself to listen again and again until the shock gave way to something colder and more useful, rage tempered by calculation. 8 years in the Marines had taught him patience. 12 years as a machinist had taught him precision. Both skills would serve him now. He opened a new notebook and began writing everything down. Times, dates, conversations, patterns in Reed's illness. The evidence was circumstantial, but damning when viewed as a whole. Reed got sick after meals prepared by Maisie. His symptoms worsened during extended stays with Kendra. The mysterious Tucker, presumably a medical professional, was involved in covering their tracks. The phone recording was a start, but not enough. He needed more evidence, and he needed to understand their full plan. Most importantly, he needed to keep Reed safe while he gathered proof of their guilt. Killian pulled out his laptop and began researching. Slow-acting poisons that could mimic chronic illness. Symptoms that matched Reed's medical records. Methods that would be hard to detect in standard blood work. The list was shorter than he'd expected, but long enough to require professional help to identify. He had a plan. The first step was protecting Reed without alerting the conspirators. Killian called in sick to work and drove to the hospital early, arriving before visiting hours officially began. The night nurse recognized him and allowed him inside Reed's room. His son was awake, staring at the ceiling with a listless expression that had become too familiar. "Dad, you're early. Couldn't sleep. Thought we could have breakfast together." Reed's face brightened slightly. "The hospital food is terrible. I brought something better." Killian produced a bag from the hospital cafeteria. Pancakes and orange juice, fresh from downstairs. They ate together while Killian carefully watched every bite Reed took. When the nurses brought Reed's morning medications, Killian insisted on reviewing each pill and checking the dosages against the chart. The staff seemed puzzled by his sudden attention to detail, but no one objected. "I want to stay with you today," Killian told his son. "Make sure you're getting proper care." "What about work?" "You're more important than work." Maisie arrived an hour later, surprise flickering across her face when she found Killian still there. "I thought you had the early shift today." "Called in sick. Figured Reed needed me more than the plant did." Something passed behind Maisie's eyes. Annoyance, maybe, or concern that her plans were being disrupted. "That's sweet, but you don't need to worry. Mom and I have everything under control." "I'm sure you do, but I want to be here." Kendra entered the room carrying her usual coffee and wearing her usual scowl. She stopped short when she saw Killian. "You're here early. Took the day off. How responsible." The word dripped with sarcasm. "I hope your employer appreciates such dedication to family time." "My family comes first," Killian said, meeting her gaze directly. "Always." For the next several hours, Killian observed everything. How Kendra and Maisie interacted with the medical staff, what they did when they thought he wasn't watching, how they reacted to his continued presence. The most telling moment came during lunch. A nurse brought Reed's meal, but before the boy could eat, Kendra intervened. "Let me check that first, dear. Hospital food can be quite questionable." She fussed with the tray, rearranging items and adding seasoning from a small container in her purse. The gesture looked motherly, but Killian now understood its true purpose. "Actually," Killian said, standing up, "I think I'll get Reed something from the cafeteria. He mentioned wanting a grilled cheese sandwich." "That's unnecessary," Kendra said quickly. "This meal is perfectly adequate." "I insist." Killian's tone brooked no argument. "Come on, buddy. Let's go pick out lunch together." Reed seemed confused but happy to leave the room. As they walked down the corridor, Killian glanced back to see Kendra and Maisie in heated whisper conversation. In the cafeteria, Killian let Reed choose his own food and watched him eat every bite. Color returned to the boy's cheeks and his energy improved noticeably. "I feel better today," Reed said, working on a chocolate chip cookie. "Good. That's very good." "Dad, why are you staring at me funny?" Just happy to see you eating well. That afternoon, while Maisie and Kendra stepped out for coffee, Killian called an old Marine buddy who worked private security. I need surveillance equipment, he said quietly. Cameras, recording devices, something small and undetectable. What kind of trouble are you in, Kill? The worst kind, but I can't explain over the phone. Meet me tonight. Usual place. By evening, Reed's condition had improved dramatically. The nurses commented on his increased appetite and energy. Dr. Patterson seemed pleased, but puzzled by the sudden change. Sometimes, these mysterious illnesses resolve as quickly as they appear, he told Killian and Maisie. We'll keep him overnight for observation, but he might be able to go home tomorrow. Maisie smiled brightly. That's wonderful news. But Killian caught the flash of frustration in her eyes before she composed her expression. His son getting better wasn't wonderful news for her. It was a setback. That night, Killian met his old Marine buddy, Vic, in the parking lot of the 24-hour diner. Vic handed over a bag containing tiny cameras, audio recorders, and a sophisticated monitoring system. This gear will pick up everything, Vic explained. Audio, video, motion detection. You can monitor it all from your phone. What do I owe you? Buy me breakfast and tell me what's really going on. Over coffee and eggs, Killian explained everything. The mysterious illness, the overheard conversation, his growing suspicions. Vic listened without judgment, his face growing darker with each detail. You need to involve the police, Vic said finally. Not yet. I need more evidence, something unshakable. Be careful, Kill. If these women are capable of poisoning a child, they're capable of anything. Driving home, Killian felt the weight of his terrible knowledge. His wife, the woman he'd loved for 8 years, the mother of his child, was systematically murdering their son for money. His mother-in-law was not just disapproving but actively evil. Everything he believed about his life was a lie. But lies could be exposed. Evil could be punished. And his son would survive this, no matter what it cost. The war had begun, though his enemies didn't know it yet. Killian would use their confidence against them. Let them believe they remained undetected while he gathered the evidence needed to destroy them completely and show no mercy, only justice. 3 days after installing the surveillance equipment, Killian's phone buzzed with motion alerts from the hidden cameras. He was at work, running a late shift at the machining plant. But the timestamp showed activity in his kitchen at 10 p.m., well after Reed's bedtime. The video feed showed Maisie in the kitchen, but she wasn't alone. A man Killian didn't recognize stood close behind her, his hands on her waist as she prepared what looked like a late-night snack. The man was tall, well-dressed, with the soft features of someone who'd never done physical labor. Killian's jaw clenched as he watched his wife turn to the stranger, her arms around his neck, and kiss him with the passion she'd stopped showing her husband months ago. The betrayal cut deep, but it also provided another piece of the puzzle. Maisie had more motivation than just money. She had a replacement lined up. The audio came through clearly on his earbuds. Tucker, we can't keep meeting here, Maisie said, her voice breathless. Tucker, the name from the hospital conversation. Killian turned up the volume and started recording the feed on his phone. Where else can we go? My place is being watched by process servers, the man replied. Besides, your husband works nights. We have ours. It's still risky. What if he comes home early? Then we stick to the story. I'm here as Reed's consulting pharmacist, reviewing his medications, Tucker said. His smile was cold and calculating. Which reminds me, how's our little patient doing? Better since Killian started hovering. I haven't been able to give him the full dosage. That's a problem. We need to accelerate the timeline. Killian's hands shook as he continued recording. They were discussing increasing the poison dosage because his presence was interfering with their murder plot. I can't speed things up if you won't leave Reed alone, Maisie protested. Then we find another way. The lawsuit settlement is due next month. I need that money, Amelia. My creditors aren't patient people. So Tucker was in debt, desperate enough to help murder a child for financial gain. Killian filed that information away for later. Maybe we should wait, Maisie said. Find another solution. There is no other solution. Tucker's voice turned harsh. I'm facing criminal charges if I can't pay what I owe. Your mother promised me a way out, and I'm holding her to it. Don't threaten my mother. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm stating facts. We all have too much to lose to back out now. They moved out of camera range, but the audio continued picking up their conversation from the living room. Show me what you've been giving him, Tucker said. Killian heard the sound of pills rattling, papers rustling. Good, but we need to increase the frequency. Every meal, every snack. No exceptions. Killian's been preparing most of Reed's food lately. Then you find a way around that. Slip it into his drinks. Hide it in treats. I don't care how you do it. Just get it done. And if Killian gets suspicious, he won't. According to your mother, he's too simple to figure out complex schemes. Just keep playing the devoted wife and worried mother. The conversation continued for another hour, revealing the full scope of their plan. Tucker Rain was a pharmacist facing both civil and criminal charges for embezzling from his practice. Kendra had approached him months ago with a proposal: help them slowly poison Reed, while making it look like a natural illness and share in the insurance payout, and Maisie's eventual inheritance. The method was elegant in its cruelty. Small doses of a slow-acting toxin that mimicked chronic childhood illness. Symptoms that would confuse doctors and gradually weaken Reed until his system finally shut down. Tucker's medical knowledge allowed him to falsify records and steer the investigation away from poisoning. But the plan had a fatal flaw. They'd underestimated both Reed's resilience and his father's dedication. Killian's increased involvement had disrupted their timeline, and Tucker's mounting legal troubles made him desperate to accelerate the murder. Around midnight, Tucker left through the back door while Maisie cleaned the kitchen. Killian watched his wife move through their home, straightening pillows and washing dishes, playing the role of the perfect housewife while planning their son's death. When Killian's shift ended at 6 a.m., he drove straight to the bank. The surveillance had provided another crucial piece of information. Maisie and Tucker had discussed transferring funds to hidden accounts. Time to see what financial crimes accompanied the attempted murder. At the bank, Killian requested account statements for all their joint accounts going back 6 months. What he found made his blood boil. Systematic transfers of small amounts to accounts he'd never seen before. Forged signatures on withdrawal slips. His wife had been stealing from him while plotting to kill his son. The amounts weren't huge individually, a few hundred here, 1,000 there, but they added up to nearly $15,000. Money Killian had earned through overtime shifts and weekend work. Money meant to pay for Reed's medical care and their family's future. Is there a problem with these transactions? The bank manager asked, noting Killian's expression. Noting Killian said, I need copies of everything. All statements, all withdrawal records, all signatures. Of course, the bank manager said. Is this for legal proceedings? It will be, Killian replied, armed with financial evidence of theft and recorded proof of the murder conspiracy. Killian began phase 2 of his plan. If Maisie and Kendra thought they could destroy his family and steal his money, they were about to learn how wrong they could be. But first, he needed to ensure Reed's safety while he built an unshakable case. One mistake, one moment of inattention, and these monsters might succeed in killing his son. Killian's garage workshop had transformed into a command center. Bank statements covered one wall, connected by red string to photographs and transcribed conversations. Surveillance footage played on his laptop while audio recordings provided a soundtrack to his rage. 2 weeks of careful observation had revealed the full scope of his family's betrayal. The hidden cameras captured everything. Maisie crushing pills and mixing them into Reed's apple juice when she thought Killian was sleeping. Kendra mixing powder into the boy's oatmeal during her helpful babysitting sessions. Tucker arriving for late-night strategy meetings where they discussed accelerating the timeline. But Killian had a strategy of his own. While maintaining the appearance of a devoted but clueless husband, he'd begun replacing their poison with harmless substitutes. When Maisie reached for the concealed vial in her purse, she found tablets that looked identical but contained nothing more dangerous than calcium supplements. When Kendra added her special vitamins to Reed's food, she was actually giving him real vitamins that improved his health. The results were striking. Reed's energy returned day by day. His appetite improved. The mysterious symptoms that had puzzled doctors began disappearing as the actual poison left the system. "He's looking so much better," Killian said, watching Reed play with his toy dinosaurs. Cambria Knox said during her visit that afternoon. Killian's childhood friend had stopped by with homemade soup, as she often did when Reed was unwell. But unlike Maisie and Kendra, Cambria's concern felt genuine. Her presence in their house felt like a reminder of what real love looked like. "The doctors think they finally found the right treatment," Killian lied smoothly. "I'm so glad." Cambria watched Reed playing with his dinosaur toys, her expression troubled. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." She glanced toward the kitchen, where Maisie was preparing dinner, then lowered her voice. "Have you noticed anything odd about how Maisie talks about Reed's illness?" Killian's heart rate spiked, but he kept his expression neutral. "What do you mean?" "It's probably nothing. But at the grocery store last week, she was talking to another mother about it. Most parents get emotional discussing their child's health problems. But Maisie seemed almost clinical, like she was describing someone else's kid." The observation cut straight to the truth. Killian had noticed the same disconnect. Maisie performed concern when others were watching but lacked the raw emotion of a genuinely worried mother. "She handles stress differently than I do," Killian said carefully. "Maybe that's it." Cambria didn't look convinced. I've known you since we were kids, Kill. You're a good father. If anyone can help Reed get through this, it's you." "Thanks, Cam. That means a lot." After Cambria left, Killian found Maisie in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear and voice lowered to a whisper. "I know you're frustrated," she was saying, "but the situation is more complicated now." Killian pretended to be checking the mail while listening. "He's getting better instead of worse. Tucker thinks someone's interfering with the medication." A pause while the other party responded. "No, Killian doesn't suspect anything. He's just being more protective than usual." Another pause. "Fine, we'll meet tomorrow night. But this needs to end soon. Tucker's creditors are getting impatient." Maisie hung up and noticed Killian in the doorway. "Just coordinating with Mom about tomorrow's doctor visit," she said smoothly. "Good. I want to be there for that appointment." "Of course. We should all be there." That night, while Maisie slept, Killian reviewed the financial records again. The pattern was clear: systematic theft designed to look like legitimate expenses. Maisie had been siphoning money for months, building a nest egg for her new life with Tucker. But she'd made a crucial mistake. Several of the forged withdrawal slips bore signatures that didn't quite match Killian's handwriting. Bank security cameras would show Maisie making withdrawals she claimed he authorized. When the time came, those discrepancies would prove fraud. Killian's phone buzzed with a motion alert from the kitchen camera. The timestamp showed 2 a.m., well past anyone's normal bedtime. He switched to the live feed and watched Kendra enter through the back door, moving quietly through the darkened house. She went straight to the kitchen cabinet where they kept Reed's medications, but instead of finding the poison she'd hidden there, she found the harmless substitutes Killian had left in their place. Her face twisted with confusion and anger as she examined the pills. Kendra quickly grabbed her phone and typed a message. Seconds later, Killian's audio surveillance picked up Maisie's phone buzzing in the bedroom. He heard his wife slip out of bed and pad downstairs. "What are you doing here?" Maisie whispered when she reached the kitchen. "Something's wrong. The medication has been switched." "That's impossible. I checked it yesterday. Look for yourself." Killian watched his wife examine the pills with growing alarm. These women had been so confident in their deception that the possibility of discovery seemed to genuinely shock them. "Someone knows," Kendra said flatly. "Who?" "Killian doesn't have access to these pills." "Then who does?" The two women stood in Killian's kitchen at 2 in the morning, discussing the failure of their murder plot with the casual tone of people whose dinner reservation had been canceled. "We need to call Tucker," Maisie finally said. "Absolutely not. Phone calls can be traced." "Then what do we do?" "We accelerate everything. If someone is interfering, we need to finish this before they can expose us." The cold calculation in Kendra's voice made Killian's skin crawl. Even faced with potential discovery, her primary concern was completing the murder of her grandson. "How do we accelerate?" Maisie asked. "Direct injection. Tucker can provide something fast-acting that mimics an allergic reaction or seizure. Make it look like a sudden onset of whatever illness the doctors think Reed has." "That's too risky. If they find injection marks, they won't look for injection marks if it appears to be the natural progression of his existing condition." Killian gripped his phone tighter, rage building as these monsters discussed murdering his son with a lethal injection. But he forced himself to remain calm and keep recording. Every word was evidence that would put them in prison. "When?" Maisie asked. "Tomorrow night, after Killian goes to work." "What if he doesn't go to work?" "He's been staying home more often." "Then we create a reason for him to leave. A family emergency, a problem at the plant, something urgent that requires his immediate attention." They spent another 20 minutes discussing logistics before Kendra left through the back door. Maisie returned to bed, but Killian could hear her restless movements through the bedroom wall. His wife was planning to murder their son in less than 24 hours. The time for surveillance had ended. Tomorrow he would set the final trap. Detective Innes Holbrook had worked homicide for 15 years, and something about the pharmacy case bothered her. Tucker Rain was facing charges for embezzling funds and falsifying prescriptions, but the pattern of missing medications suggested something more sinister than financial fraud. Sitting in her office at 7 a.m. with a cup of black coffee and Rain's files spread across her desk, she reviewed the inventory discrepancies one more time. The missing drugs weren't typical street narcotics or painkillers that addicts craved. Instead, they were medications that could cause slow chronic illness if administered incorrectly or deliberately. The phone call from the anonymous tip line had come in at 6:30. "Detective Holbrook, you should look into Tucker Rain's connection to the Bryce family. The kid who's been in and out of the hospital all year." "Who is this?" "Someone who cares about that boy's safety. Check Rain's financial records against Maisie Bryce's bank accounts. Look for patterns." The line had gone dead before she could ask more questions, but 15 years of police work had taught her to trust her instincts. Anonymous tips usually came from people who couldn't speak openly, family members, co-workers, or criminals with consciences. A quick database search revealed that Reed Bryce, age 8, had been treated at St. Louis General 17 times in the past year for a mysterious illness. His mother, Maisie Bryce, had been present for every visit. The attending physicians had run extensive tests but found no definitive diagnosis. More interesting was Tucker Rain's connection to the case. He'd served as a consulting pharmacist on 3 of Reed's admissions, reviewing the boy's medications and making recommendations. For a man facing criminal charges, he seemed unusually interested in one specific patient. Holbrook pulled Rain's financial records and cross-referenced them with the Bryce family's bank accounts. What she found made her reach for her car keys. Several large deposits to Rain's personal account corresponded with withdrawals from accounts linked to Kendra Kane, Maisie Bryce's mother. The amounts were substantial enough to suggest payment for services, but what services would an elderly woman need from a disgraced pharmacist? By 9 a.m., Holbrook was parked outside the Bryce residence in an unmarked car, watching the house through binoculars. Routine surveillance on a hunch, but hunches had solved more cases than forensic evidence in her experience. At 9:15, a silver Mercedes pulled into the driveway. An older woman emerged, well-dressed, expensive jewelry, the bearing of someone accustomed to being obeyed. This matched the description of Kendra Kane from the financial records. At 9:30, a younger blonde woman left the house with a boy who appeared to be around 8 years old. The child looked healthier than his medical record suggested he should, walking with energy and carrying a backpack decorated with dinosaurs. Holbrook started her engine and followed at a distance as the woman, presumably Maisie Bryce, drove to St. Louis General Hospital. The boy's demeanor was that of a normal child going for a routine checkup, not someone suffering from chronic illness. In the hospital parking garage, Holbrook positioned herself where she could observe the family's arrival. She watched Maisie Bryce interact with her son, noting the woman's body language and facial expressions. Most mothers bringing sick children to the hospital showed signs of stress or worry. Maisie looked like someone running errands. The investigative instincts that had made Holbrook successful whispered that something was very wrong in the Bryce family. But wrong wasn't the same as criminal, and suspicious behavior wasn't evidence of a crime. Her phone rang as she was considering whether to enter the hospital. "Detective Holbrook, this is Killian Bryce. I believe you've been looking into Tucker Rain." The voice was calm, controlled, but she heard undertones of barely contained rage. "Mr. Bryce, how did you get this number? I have information about Rain that you need to see." "Information about what he's been doing to my son." "What kind of information?" "The kind that proves 3 people have been slowly poisoning my 8-year-old boy for the past year." Holbrook's grip tightened on the phone. "Mr. Bryce, that's a very serious accusation. I have recordings, video surveillance, financial records, bank statements showing payments from my mother-in-law to Rain. Everything you need to arrest them. Where are you now?" "Following my wife and son to the hospital. I think they're planning to accelerate their timeline. My son could be in immediate danger." Holbrook was already moving toward the hospital entrance. "I'm in the parking garage at St. Louis General. Can you meet me?" 5 minutes. The man who approached her car matched the description from the database. Tall, dark hair, the solid build of someone who worked with his hands. But his eyes held the focused intensity of a soldier preparing for war. "Detective Holbrook, I'm Killian Bryce." He slid into the passenger seat and immediately handed her a tablet computer loaded with video files. "This was recorded in my kitchen 2 nights ago," he said, starting the first video. For the next 20 minutes, Holbrook watched and listened to evidence of the most cold-blooded conspiracy she'd encountered in 15 years of police work. Audio recordings of Maisie Bryce and Kendra Kane discussing their son's murder. Video footage of medication being tampered with. Financial records showing systematic theft and payments to their co-conspirator. "Jesus Christ," she whispered as the final recording ended. "There's more. They're planning to kill him tonight with a lethal injection. Make it look like his illness finally overwhelmed his system." "How long have you known about this?" 3 weeks. I've been gathering evidence and protecting Reed by replacing their poison with harmless pills." "Why didn't you come to the police immediately?" Killian's jaw tightened. "Because I needed unshakable proof. These people have been fooling doctors and social workers for a year. I couldn't risk them talking their way out of charges." Holbrook understood. Domestic cases involving children were notoriously difficult to prosecute, especially when the accused were educated, well-spoken people who projected normalcy. But the evidence Killian had gathered was overwhelming. "We need to get your son somewhere safe while we execute arrest warrants," she said. "They're in the hospital now. Kendra is probably meeting them there. Then we go now. But Mr. Bryce, when we make arrests, you cannot be involved in any confrontation. Let us handle this legally. As long as my son is safe, I don't care how you handle it." But Holbrook saw something in his eyes that suggested Killian Bryce would take matters into his own hands if the legal system failed him. She couldn't blame him for that rage, but she needed to ensure justice was served through proper channels. "Let's go get your boy," she said. The hidden camera Killian had installed in the kitchen activated at 11 p.m., triggered by movement in the darkened house. He watched a live feed from his phone while sitting in his truck outside St. Louis General Hospital, where he'd supposedly been called for an emergency regarding Reed's latest test results. The emergency was fake, orchestrated by Maisie to get him away from the house. But instead of rushing inside the hospital, Killian remained in the parking lot, monitoring the surveillance system that would capture his wife and mother-in-law in their final act of betrayal. Kendra entered first, using the key Maisie had given her months ago. She moved through the house with the confidence of someone following a rehearsed plan, going straight to the kitchen, where she began preparing materials on the counter. The camera captured everything in crystal clear detail as Kendra laid out syringes, medication vials, and alcohol wipes with the precision of a medical professional. Her movements were calm, methodical, showing no hesitation about what she was planning to do. Maisie arrived 20 minutes later with Reed, who was rubbing his eyes and complaining about being woken up for another medical emergency. "Why can't I stay with Dad at the hospital?" Reed asked as they entered the kitchen. "Because Grandma needs to give you special medicine that will make you feel better," Maisie said, her voice saccharine with false concern. "I don't want any more medicine. I feel fine now." "The doctor says you need it," Kendra interjected, drawing medication into a syringe. "Just a little shot, and then you can go back to bed." Killian's hands clenched around his phone as he watched these monsters prepare to murder his son. But he forced himself to wait just a moment longer, until they incriminated themselves beyond any possibility of denial. "This will make all your sickness go away forever," Kendra continued, testing the syringe for air bubbles. Reed looked confused. "But Dad says medicine takes time to work." "Your father doesn't understand medicine like we do," Maisie said. "Grandma knows exactly what you need." The words were captured clearly by the audio system. Two women discussing permanent solutions and dismissing the child's father while preparing to inject him with lethal drugs. Evidence that no jury would ignore. Kendra approached Reed with a syringe, while Maisie held the boy's arm steady. This was the moment. Any longer and his son would be in real danger. Killian burst through the front door with Detective Holbrook and two uniformed officers behind him. "Police, step away from the child." The scene froze like a tableau. Kendra stood with the syringe inches from Reed's arm, while Maisie gripped the boy's shoulders. Both women stared at the officers with expressions of pure shock. "What's happening?" Reed cried, frightened by the sudden invasion of armed strangers. "It's okay, buddy," Killian said, moving quickly to his son's side. "These are police officers. They're here to help." "Drop the syringe and step back," Holbrook ordered, her weapon drawn but pointed down. Her eyes cycled through several emotions: surprise, anger, and finally cold calculation. "Officer, I'm administering prescribed medication to my grandson." "This is a medical emergency," Kendra said. "Ma'am, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and child endangerment." "That's ridiculous," Maisie sputtered. "We're caring for a sick child." "Officer, my husband has been under tremendous stress." "Save it," Holbrook interrupted. "We've seen the surveillance footage. We know about Tucker Rain. We have your financial records showing payments for services rendered." The color drained from Maisie's face as the full scope of their exposure became clear. "I want to see my lawyer," Kendra said flatly, setting down the syringe. "You'll have that opportunity. Right now, you're under arrest." As the officers moved in with handcuffs, Maisie turned to Killian with desperation in her eyes. "Killian, you don't understand. Reed was really sick. We were trying to help him." "I understand perfectly," Killian said, his voice ice cold. "I've been recording you for 3 weeks. I heard you discuss murdering our son. I watched you steal money from our accounts. I know about Tucker and your affair, and the insurance money you were planning to collect." Maisie's mask of innocence finally cracked. "You bastard. You set us up. You set yourselves up." "I just provided the rope." Kendra maintained her composure, even as the handcuffs clicked into place. "You have no idea what you've done, Killian. No idea what this will cost you." "The only thing it's going to cost me is a wife and mother-in-law," who tried to murder my son for money." As the officers led them away, Maisie screamed accusations and threats while Kendra walked in dignified silence. Neither woman showed a moment of concern for Reed, who watched the proceedings with wide, confused eyes. "Dad, why are they arresting Mom and Grandma?" Killian knelt beside his son, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes adults make very bad choices. The police officers are here to make sure you stay safe." "Am I safe now?" "Yes, buddy. You're safe now." Detective Holbrook approached as the squad cars pulled away. "We'll need detailed statements from both of you, and we'll want your son examined by doctors to confirm the poisoning and document any lasting effects." "Whatever you need," Killian said. "Just make sure they never get near him again. With the evidence you provided, they'll be facing serious prison time. But Mr. Bryce, there will be a trial. Your son may have to testify about what he experienced." Killian looked down at Reed, who was already showing signs of recovery now that the poison was out of his system. "He's stronger than they thought. We both are." The final piece of Killian's plan had worked perfectly. By allowing the conspiracy to proceed to the point of attempted murder, he created irrefutable evidence of their guilt. The surveillance footage showed clear intent to kill. The financial records proved motive. The testimony of multiple witnesses would seal their fate. Tucker Rain was arrested at his apartment 2 hours later, caught with enough controlled substances to add drug trafficking charges to his existing crimes. His cooperation with authorities would be meaningless. The evidence against all 3 conspirators was overwhelming. Killian drove Reed home from the police station. His son fell asleep in the passenger seat, exhausted by the night's events. For the first time in months, the boy looked peaceful, no longer fighting poison in his system or sensing the murderous intentions of people who claimed to love him. The house felt different when they arrived. Clean, somehow, as if removing the conspirators had purged a toxic presence from their lives. Killian carried Reed to his bedroom and tucked him in, promising to be there when he woke up. In the kitchen, Killian gathered the syringes and medication vials the police had left as evidence. The labels showed powerful sedatives and cardiac medications that would have stopped Reed's heart within minutes. His wife and mother-in-law had planned to inject his son with drugs that would cause immediate organ failure, but they had failed. Their arrogance and assumption that Killian was too simple to uncover their plot had led to their destruction. Every conversation they'd had while believing themselves unobserved had been recorded. Every financial transaction they'd made while thinking themselves clever had been documented. Now they would face justice, and Reed would finally be safe. The courtroom felt sterile under fluorescent lights as Killian took the witness stand for his 3rd day of testimony. 6 months had passed since the arrests, and the trial had become a media sensation. 3 defendants, a mother, grandmother, and pharmacist, accused of conspiring to murder an 8-year-old boy for insurance money. Prosecutor Janet Mills approached the witness stand with a tablet containing the surveillance footage. "Mr. Bryce, I want you to watch this video, recorded in your kitchen on the night of the arrests. Can you identify the voices we hear?" The courtroom fell silent as the audio played through the speakers. "This will make all your sickness go away forever." Kendra's voice, cold and calculating. "Grandma knows exactly what you need." Maisie's voice, reassuring her son while preparing to kill him. Killian watched the jury's faces as they heard his wife and mother-in-law discuss murdering his son with the casual tone of people planning a dinner menu. Several jurors looked physically ill. "Mr. Bryce, how did you feel when you heard these words being spoken to your son?" "Like I was watching strangers," Killian replied, his voice steady despite the rage that still burned in his chest. "The women I thought I knew would never have harmed Reed. These people were something else entirely." Defense attorney Robert Chun tried a different approach during cross-examination. "Mr. Bryce, isn't it true that you set up surveillance in your own home without your wife's knowledge or consent?" "Yes." "And you recorded private conversations between family members?" "Yes." "You essentially spied on your own family for weeks." "I protected my son from people who were trying to kill him." Chun pressed harder. But you never confronted your wife directly about your suspicions. You never gave her a chance to explain. Explain what? Killian's voice turned sharp. How do you explain crushing poison into a child's food? How do you explain stealing money while planning your son's funeral? Objection. Chun called. Sustained. Judge Morrison ruled. Mr. Bryce, please limit your responses to the questions asked. But the damage was done. The jury had heard the raw emotion in Killian's voice, the fury of a father who discovered the people he trusted most were monsters. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. 3 weeks of surveillance footage showing systematic poisoning, audio recordings of conspiracy discussions, financial records proving payments between co-conspirators, and medical testimony confirming that Reed's symptoms matched poisoning rather than natural illness. Dr. Patricia Vance, the toxicologist who'd analyzed Reed's blood samples, delivered devastating testimony. The levels of carbamazepine and lithium in the child's system were consistent with chronic poisoning over several months. These medications, when given to someone who doesn't need them, cause exactly the symptoms Mr. Reed Bryce experienced. Tucker Rain had tried to cooperate with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence, but his testimony only strengthened the case against all 3 defendants. His desperate financial situation provided clear motive, while his medical knowledge explained how they'd nearly succeeded in their plot. Kendra Kane approached me about 6 months ago. Rain testified, his voice barely audible. She said her daughter was trapped in an unhappy marriage and needed a way out. She offered to pay me substantial money to help make her grandson appear chronically ill. Did she specify what the end goal of this illness would be? Mills asked. She said the boy's death would solve multiple problems: insurance money, custody issues, and freedom for her daughter to start a new life. And you agreed to participate in the murder of an 8-year-old child. Rain's composure cracked. I owed money to dangerous people. I was facing prison time anyway. She made it sound like a medical procedure, not murder. The defense's attempts to portray the defendants as concerned family members fell apart under scrutiny. Surveillance footage showed Maisie and Kendra discussing Reed's death with excitement rather than grief. Financial records revealed they'd already begun planning how to spend the insurance payout. Most damning was Kendra's own voice, recorded clearly as she prepared the lethal injection. This will make all your sickness go away forever. When Maisie took the stand in her own defense, her performance was masterful but unconvincing. She wept as she described her love for Reed, her devotion to his care, her shock at being accused of such horrible crimes. I would never hurt my son, she sobbed. He's everything to me. But Prosecutor Mills was ready with contradictory evidence. Mrs. Price, if Reed was everything to you, why were you secretly transferring money to hidden accounts while he was hospitalized? I was saving for his medical care. Were you saving for his medical care when you told Tucker Rain that your husband was too simple to notice what you were doing? I never said that. We have it on audio recording. Mrs. Price, your own voice. The jury heard Maisie's voice, cold and dismissive. He doesn't suspect anything. He's too focused on Reed to notice what's really happening. Her credibility shattered completely when Mills played the recording of Maisie discussing the murder timeline with casual indifference. How much longer? Maisie's recorded voice asked. A few more weeks, maybe a month. And you're sure it can't be traced? In the courtroom, Maisie stared at the floor while her own words condemned her. Kendra never took the stand. Her attorney advised against it, knowing that her recorded conversations revealed a level of cold calculation that would horrify any jury. Instead, she sat throughout the trial with perfect posture and an expression of mild interest, as if watching a moderately entertaining play. The closing arguments summarize 3 weeks of overwhelming evidence. The prosecution painted a picture of greed, betrayal, and child abuse that shocked even experienced court observers. The defense attempted to create reasonable doubt, but had no answer for hours of recorded confessions. Killian sat in the gallery next to Cambria Knox, who had attended every day of the trial to support him and Reed. His son was staying with Desmond during the proceedings, shielded from the details of what his mother and grandmother had planned for him. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Prosecutor Mills said in her closing statement, "the evidence shows 3 adults conspiring to murder an innocent child for money. They poisoned him slowly, systematically, while pretending to provide medical care. They stole from his father while planning his funeral. They nearly succeeded because no one suspected that a mother and grandmother could be capable of such evil." She paused, letting the words sink in. "But they failed because one person refused to give up on that child." Killian Bryce suspected, investigated, and gathered the evidence that saved his son's life. The defendants had bet that a father's love would blind him to their crimes. They were wrong. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. The words echoed through the courtroom as Judge Morrison read the verdicts. Maisie Bryce, guilty of attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, and child endangerment. Kendra Kane, guilty on identical charges. Tucker Rain, guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, medical malpractice, fraud, and drug trafficking. Killian felt no satisfaction in the moment, only relief that justice had been served. Behind him, he heard Maisie's family weeping, relatives who genuinely believed in her innocence until faced with overwhelming evidence of her guilt. The sentencing hearing came 2 weeks later. Judge Morrison had reviewed psychological evaluations, character references, and victim impact statements before making his decision. "Mrs. Bryce," the judge addressed Maisie, who stood in orange prison clothing, her designer facade finally stripped away. "You have been convicted of attempting to murder your own son for financial gain. The premeditation involved, the systematic nature of the poisoning, and the complete lack of remorse you've shown throughout this trial demand the harshest sentence allowed by law. 25 years to life in state prison." Maisie's knees buckled. Her attorney caught her arm as she swayed, but she showed no emotion beyond shock at the severity of her punishment. Kendra received an identical sentence. At 58, she would likely die in prison, but her expression remained unchanged, as if the verdict applied to someone else entirely. Tucker Rain received 15 years federal time after his cooperation was weighed against the severity of his crimes. His financial desperation had been real, but it didn't excuse participating in child murder. After the sentencing, Killian walked out of the courthouse with Cambria beside him. Reporters shouted questions, but he ignored them all. The legal proceedings were finished, but the real work of rebuilding his life was just beginning. "How does it feel?" Cambria asked as they reached his truck. "Empty," Killian admitted. "I thought I'd feel something more when it was over. Relief, maybe. Satisfaction. You feel empty because the people you loved turned out to be monsters. Justice doesn't fix that kind of betrayal." They drove to Desmond's house to collect Reed, who'd been carefully shielded from the trial details. The 8-year-old knew his mother and grandmother had been arrested for hurting him, but he didn't understand the full scope of their crimes. "Dad." Reed ran to Killian as they entered Desmond's living room. "Uncle Desmond taught me how to play chess." "That's great, buddy." Killian hugged his son tightly, feeling the solid warmth of him. Reed had gained 15 pounds since the poisoning stopped, and his color had returned to normal. The child who'd been slowly dying was now healthy and energetic. "Are we going home now?" "Yes, we're going home." But home felt different now. Killian had changed the locks, repainted rooms, and removed every trace of Maisie and Kendra's presence. Still, memories lingered in every corner, 8 years of shared life that had been built on lies. That night, as Killian tucked Reed into bed, his son asked the question he'd been avoiding. "Will I see Mom again?" Killian had prepared for this moment, but it still felt like walking through a minefield. "Your mom made some very bad choices that hurt people. She has to stay in a special place for a long time to think about what she did." "How long?" "A very long time, buddy. Maybe forever." Reed processed this information with the pragmatic acceptance of childhood. "Is she sorry for hurting me?" The question cut deep because Killian knew the truth. Throughout the trial, Maisie had shown remorse only for being caught, not for the pain she caused their son. "I don't know if she's sorry," Killian said honestly. But you don't have to worry about seeing her until you're old enough to decide for yourself. Okay, Reed picked up his sketch pad and colored pencils. I'm drawing a new dinosaur family. Just a dad and a kid this time. That sounds perfect. 6 months later, Killian received the first letter from Maisie in prison. The envelope sat unopened on his kitchen table for 3 days before he finally read it. Killian, I know you'll never forgive me, but I need you to know that I never wanted to hurt Reed. Things got complicated with Mom and Tucker, and I couldn't find a way out. I was trapped in a situation that spiraled beyond my control. Maybe someday you'll understand that I'm not the monster you think I am. Maybe someday Reed can visit me, and I can explain everything properly. I still love you both. Maisie. Killian read the letter twice, looking for any sign of genuine remorse or acknowledgement of what she'd done. But even from prison, Maisie was still lying, still trying to manipulate him into believing she was a victim rather than a predator. He burned the letter in the fireplace and blocked any future mail from the prison system. Maisie could write 1,000 letters, but he would never read another word from the woman who tried to murder his son. Summer arrived with unusual warmth, and Killian found himself with something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. He'd taken extended leave from the machining plant, using the money recovered from Maisie's hidden accounts to support himself and Reed while they rebuilt their lives. The old camper trailer sat in Desmond's field like a wounded animal. Its aluminum skin was dented, and windows cracked from years of neglect. Killian had bought it for $300 from a farmer who was tired of looking at the eyesore. "It's pretty beat up, Dad," Reed observed, walking around the trailer and cataloging its flaws. "That's why we got it cheap. But look at the bones." Killian opened the door, which squeaked in protest. "The frame is solid. The appliances just need cleaning. With some work, this could be our adventure vehicle." "What kind of adventures?" "Whatever kind we want. Camping, fishing, exploring places we've never seen. Just you and me." The idea had excited Reed in ways that television and video games never had. For weeks, they worked together every morning, stripping out damaged materials and rebuilding the trailer's interior. Killian taught his son to use tools safely, to measure twice and cut once, to take pride in work done with their own hands. "Why are we fixing this instead of buying a new one?" Reed asked one afternoon as they sanded the cabinet doors. "Because fixing things teaches us that broken doesn't mean worthless," Killian explained. "Sometimes the best things in life are the ones you repair yourself." The lesson applied to more than camping trailers. Both Killian and Reed were healing from the damage caused by people who should have protected them. Trust came slowly, but it was coming. Cambria visited regularly, bringing lunch and helping with projects that required extra hands. Her presence felt natural and comfortable in ways that Killian was just beginning to appreciate. She'd loved him quietly for years while he was married to someone else. Never pushing, never demanding, simply being available when he needed a friend. "You're good with him," Cambria said one evening as they watched Reed practice his woodworking skills. "He's easy to be good with. Pure heart, just like his drawings." "I meant you're good at being his father. Single parenting isn't simple, especially after everything you've been through." Killian considered this. "I don't feel like I'm doing anything special, just trying to give him the childhood he deserves." "That's exactly what makes you special." The trailer restoration became a metaphor for their lives, stripping away damaged parts, rebuilding with stronger materials, creating something better than what existed before. By August, they had a functioning travel trailer, complete with sleeping quarters, a small kitchen, and storage for camping gear. "It's beautiful, Dad," Reed said, admiring their finished work. "We did good work together." That weekend, they took their first camping trip to the Oregon coast. Reed had never seen the ocean, and his wonder at the endless horizon reminded Killian how much beauty existed in the world, despite all the ugliness they'd survived. They built sandcastles and collected shells. Reed sketched seabirds while Killian cooked dinner over a camp stove. As darkness fell, they sat by their campfire and watched stars appear in the clear sky. "Dad, are you sad about Mom?" The question came without warning, as children's difficult questions often did. Killian chose his words carefully. "I'm sad about what she chose to do. I'm sad that she couldn't love us the way we deserve to be loved. But I'm not sad that she's gone from our lives. Do you think she really loved me? I think she loved the idea of you. But real love means protecting someone, not hurting them. Real love means putting someone else's happiness before your own. Like how you love me. Exactly like that." Reed seemed satisfied with this explanation. "I'm glad it's just us now." "Me too, buddy. Me too." 2 nights later, they were roasting marshmallows when Reed brought up another difficult topic. "Cambria likes you," he announced with the blunt honesty of childhood. "What makes you say that?" "She looks at you the way you look at me, like you're important." Killian smiled at his son's perceptiveness. "Would that bother you? If Cambria and I became more than friends, would she move in with us? Maybe someday, if that's what we all wanted, would she try to be my mom? No one will ever try to replace your mom. But Cambria might be someone who loves you and takes care of you like family." Reed considered this while his marshmallow caught fire. "That would be okay. She's nice, and she doesn't lie." The simple statement carried enormous weight. After months of discovering that the people closest to him had been living elaborate lies, Reed valued honesty above all other qualities. "You're right. She doesn't lie." They finished their camping trip with plans for another adventure the following month. The trailer had given them freedom to explore together. But more importantly, it had given them a project that proved they could build something good from broken pieces. Driving home, Killian realized he was genuinely happy for the first time in months. Not just relieved or grateful, but actively happy. His son was healthy and thriving. His future felt open and full of possibilities. The people who tried to destroy his family were facing the consequences of their choices, and he had survived the worst betrayal imaginable and emerged stronger. 1 year after the arrests, Killian sat in a lawyer's office, reviewing the final settlement documents. The state had seized all assets from Maisie's hidden accounts, along with Kendra's savings and investments. After legal fees and restitution for Tucker's other victims, nearly $200,000 remained. This will be held in trust for Reed until he reaches 18. Attorney Patricia Williams explained. "The money his mother stole from your family, plus interest and penalties from her other accounts." Killian signed the documents without satisfaction. No amount of money could repair the damage these people had caused, but it would ensure Reed's future education and security. "There's also this," Williams added, handing him an envelope. "A letter from your wife's attorney. She's requesting a meeting." Killian didn't open the envelope. "I'm not interested in anything she has to say. She claims to have information about other potential victims, children who may have been harmed by similar schemes." The possibility that other families had suffered made Killian's stomach turn, but it didn't change his position. If she has information about other crimes, she can share it with prosecutors. "I won't be manipulated into visiting her." Williams nodded. "I understand, but I had to present the request." Driving home, Killian thought about the letter in his jacket pocket. Part of him was curious about what Maisie wanted to say after a year in prison. Had she finally developed genuine remorse? Did she have information that could help other families? But a larger part of him recognized this as another manipulation attempt. Even from prison, Maisie was trying to insert herself back into his life by claiming altruistic motives. He stopped at a gas station and threw the letter away unopened. At home, Reed was in the backyard working on a new drawing. His subject matter had evolved from dinosaurs to camping scenes and adventures with his father. The change reflected his growing confidence and happiness. "Dad, look." Reed held up his latest sketch. "It's us fishing at the lake last weekend." The drawing showed 2 figures beside a mountain lake, fishing poles in hand and smiles on their faces. Reed had captured something essential about that day. The peace, the connection, the simple joy of being together. "That's perfect, buddy. You're getting really good at drawing people. I want to draw Cambria too. Could she come camping with us next time? Killian and Cambria had been moving slowly toward something deeper than friendship. She understood that trust came hard after such profound betrayal, and she never pushed for more than he was ready to give. Would you like that? Yeah, she's fun. And she makes you smile differently. Different how? Like you used to smile before Mom got mean. The observation surprised Killian. He hadn't realized that Reed had noticed the change in his demeanor during those final months of marriage, when Maisie's manipulation and criticism had worn him down. I didn't know you could tell I was unhappy. Kids notice everything. Kids notice everything, Reed said with unusual wisdom. Adults think we don't understand, but we do. That evening, Killian called Cambria and invited her to join their next camping trip. Her enthusiasm was infectious, reminding him how good it felt to be around someone who genuinely cared about his happiness. Are you sure Reed's okay with me coming along? It was his idea. He says you make me smile differently. Different how? Like I used to before. Killian trailed off, not wanting to bring Maisie into their conversation. I understand, Kill. I'm not going anywhere. Whatever pace you need, whatever time you need to heal, I'll be here. The promise meant everything to someone who'd learned that love could be weaponized by people who claimed to care. 3 weeks later, the three of them sat around a campfire at Crater Lake, watching stars reflect in the impossibly blue water. Reed had fallen asleep against Killian's shoulder, while Cambria leaned against his other side. This is perfect, she whispered. Yeah, it is. For the first time since discovering his wife's betrayal, Killian felt genuinely at peace. His son was healthy and happy. His future held possibilities he was excited to explore. The people who tried to destroy his family were facing the consequences of their choices in prison cells where they belonged. Dad, Reed stirred slightly. Will you tell me a story? What kind of story? About brave people who fix broken things. Killian smiled, understanding that his son needed stories that reflected their own journey. Once upon a time, there was a father and son who discovered that some people they trusted were trying to hurt them. But instead of giving up, they fought back. They gathered evidence, they stayed strong, and they made sure the bad people couldn't hurt anyone else. Did they win? They won. And afterward, they built a new life together. They went on adventures and made new friends who really loved them. They learned that even when bad things happen, good people can still choose to do what's right. Are we the good people in this story? With good people, buddy, we choose to fix things instead of breaking them. We choose to help instead of hurt. We choose to love instead of lie. Reed smiled and settled back against his father's shoulder. I like that story. Later, after putting Reed to bed in the trailer, Killian and Cambria sat by the dying fire and talked about the future. Small plans at first. Another camping trip, Reed's upcoming birthday, improvements to their rebuilt life. Have you thought about what you'll do when the media attention dies down completely? Cambria asked. The trial had generated national coverage, and Killian had received interview requests from news programs and documentary filmmakers. He'd refused them all, wanting to protect Reed's privacy and avoid reliving their nightmare for public consumption. I want to help other families, Killian said. Kids who are being hurt by people who should protect them. Maybe work with social services or law enforcement to recognize the signs I missed for so long. That's a good mission. Important work. Someone should have noticed what was happening to Reed sooner. If I can help one other kid, you'll save him the way you saved Reed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching embers fade to ash. Tomorrow, they would pack up their trailer and return to ordinary life. But this moment felt like a turning point. The past year had been about survival and justice. The future would be about building something better. As they prepared for bed, Killian thought about the letter from Maisie that he'd thrown away unread. Whatever she wanted to say, whatever new manipulation she was attempting, it didn't matter. She had made her choices, and those choices had led to a prison cell where she would spend decades regretting her crimes. He had made different choices: to protect his son, to seek justice through legal channels, to rebuild rather than seek revenge. Those choices had led to this moment of peace beside a mountain lake, with people who loved him honestly. In the morning, Reed woke up early and climbed out of his sleeping bag. "Dad, when we go home, can we start planning our next adventure?" "Absolutely. Where do you want to go?" "Somewhere we've never been before. Somewhere beautiful. The whole world is full of beautiful places we haven't seen yet. Then we have lots of adventures ahead of us." "We do, buddy. We have a whole lifetime of adventures." Outside their trailer, the sun rose over Crater Lake, painting the water gold and beginning another day in their new life. A life built on truth instead of lies, love instead of manipulation, hope instead of fear. They had survived the worst that people could do to each other, and they had emerged stronger. Not because they'd forgotten the betrayal, but because they'd chosen to build something better from the wreckage. Some people choose to break things. Killian and Reed had chosen to fix them. Killian won not through fury or revenge, but through patience, strategy, and unwavering dedication to his son's safety. He gathered evidence methodically, trusted the legal system to deliver justice, and focused on building a better future rather than dwelling on past betrayals. In the end, the monsters who tried to destroy his family faced the consequences of their choices, while Killian and Reed discovered that broken things can be repaired, and sometimes the rebuilt version is stronger than what came before. There was no forgiveness, no reconciliation, just justice and peace with his son.